May be seated. Drasha Shalom. So as I said earlier this week in my 2-minute Torah, languages have phrases which sometimes seem superfluous, right? I mean, in a legal document, you might see the phrase rules and regulations. And my late Uncle Max used to say particularly about meat. I mean, he was of that generation, they were immigrants, they didn't have a lot of money, they didn't eat that very often. But he would point out to you as he was giving you a hamburger, or if he took you to Nathan's in Coney Island and was eating some shrimp, that it has all the vitamins and minerals, right? It's got all the vitamins and minerals. Now, in point of fact, rules are not the same thing as regulations. I mean, we actually don't have any lawyers here today, but I'm sure somebody could explain to me the difference between rules and regulations. And, I know that vitamins are not the same thing as minerals, but it's a manner of speaking. Okay, and in Hebrew, in this parsha, we have the phrase ger v'toshav, which means literally stranger and dweller. Okay, so Abraham, when he's negotiating the purchase of a burial place for Sarah from the Hittites, says that to them, I am a ger v'toshav with you. I am a ger v'toshav with you. And then several hundred years later, in this week's parsha, Haaretz lo timacher litzmitut. The land must not be sold beyond reclaim. Ki li haaretz, because the land is mine. Ki gerim v'toshavim atem imadi. Because you are but strangers resident with me, right? And this precedes the description of the institution of the Yovel, the Jubilee. And this is very challenging to a contemporary Western sensibility. And by this, I mean also the contemporary Jewish sensibility, as I'll explain briefly. Okay, under this law, land could not be sold in perpetuity. There was a cycle of 7 years, with every 7th year being a sabbatical when you couldn't actively farm the land and loans were canceled. At the end of 7 sevens, there was the Yovel or the Jubilee. And if someone sold their land because they had become poor, the land reverted to its original owners. Okay, now I want to say what I say in a modern society, this is difficult to live with, right? Because, I mean, who's going to make a loan if it's canceled at the end of 7 years, right? I mean, right, most of us, when we bought our house, it was a 30-year mortgage, right? I'd be very happy if my loan was canceled after 7 years, right? But that's not the way it works. But even in halakha, right? Can a Jew lend money at interest to another, interest and also the sabbatical? All right, so I'm confusing things. Forget about the interest, that's something else. But the sabbatical year, right? So Hillel came up with what's known as the pros rule, which means that what Hillel says is that the Torah cancels debts which are owned to an individual, but not debts which are owed to the court. Okay, so you would sell your debt to the court, and then it wouldn't be canceled, right? And that's how they got around it. And similarly, when the Zionist movement was starting and they came to the first sabbatical year, and the kibbutzniks and the moshavim say, well, what are we supposed to do, right? So again, it's only land owned in Israel by a Jew. Okay, so Rav Kook came up, and this is still what the Israeli chief rabbinate does, and it is certainly not accepted by everybody, but for those who are, he sells all the farmland in Israel to a Gentile for a year, just like we sell our chametz, and then you can still farm it, because it's not land owned by a Jew. You know, I've always wondered if the Arab who bought it at the end of the year said, no, I'm not giving it back, all the Jews leave, right? But so far, it hasn't, right? And I have to say, and you may think I'm crazy, but I still believe this, that I have always found the concept of owning land to be a little bit odd, right? I mean, even though I own, I don't know, 1/8 of an acre or something like that, I find it odd, right? You can own a house, right? Because you built it, or you paid someone to build it, or you bought it from somebody who paid someone to build it. You can own clothes and other personal items. By the way, I've also found the idea of owning animals to be kind of weird. I mean, I'm sure that Rashi does not believe that, I'm talking about Rashi the dog, not Rashi the country, right? He doesn't believe that we own. How do you own, right? And I'm sure Bernie feels the same way, right? I mean, Rashi and Bernie own us, in fact, not the other way around, right? But who made the land? right? Who made the land, right? So how can you claim ownership of something that you didn't make, right? By just getting there first and putting up a fence? It makes no sense, really, if you think about it, right? And Rashi, the commentator, says the same thing. Do not be selfish about the land, hesitating to return to its rightful owner at Jubilee, because the land does not belong to you, right? And this is the idea which lies behind the institution of the Yovel, right? God says you have to obey it because Gerim v'toshavim aten imadi. You are strangers and dwellers with me, right? So the biblical economic system, I mean, if you claim that the Bible decrees socialism, you're wrong. If you proclaim that the Bible decrees capitalism, you're also wrong, because it decrees a mixed economy, right? It recognizes that there will be rich and there will be poor, but it strives to minimize inequality, right? It allows for land ownership, but it emphasizes that ownership is really stewardship, because everything, but especially the land, belongs to God. Right, so the land reverts to its original owner, or really its original steward, every 50 years. Huge concentrations of wealth become harder to maintain, right? Because you've got that societal reset button, right? So we recognize that ger v'toshav, stranger and dweller, is just a figure of speech, but I found in Introrei Torah a comment from the Dubner Maggid, who says that ger and toshav are actually opposite. And when I find anything from the Dubner Maggid, I pay attention to it, because the Dubner Maggid was my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. Okay, so everything that he says is good and true, right? So here's what the Dubner Maggid says. Ger carries the connotation of temporariness, while toshav carries the connotation of permanence. God says to Israel, the relationship between you and me is always that of strangers and dwellers. If you live in the world like strangers, remembering that you are only here temporarily, then I will be a dweller in your midst. My presence will dwell with you permanently. But if you regard yourselves as dwellers, as permanent owners of the land on which you live, and you forget that the land is actually not yours but mine, my presence will be a stranger. It will not dwell in your midst. In any case, you and I cannot be strangers and dwellers at the same time. If you act like a stranger, then I will be the dweller. And if you act like the dweller, I must be the stranger, right? And this, I think, also applies to the societal situation in which we, as American Jews, find ourselves, right? Because we are bicultural, right? We live in American culture and we live in Jewish culture, okay? And I don't know, maybe this was unique to the Hebrew school I went to, but I suppose not. We always have this discussion, are you an American Jew or a Jewish American, right? And by the way, the teachers always misunderstood that, right? Because they said, if you say American Jew, it means your Americanness is more important. And if you say Jewish American, it means your Jewishness is more important. But that's exactly backwards. Because if you say American Jew, then Jew is the noun, right? And American is the adjective, right? Whereas if you say Jew, so anyway, look, there is no question. I'm an American Jew, right? There's, absolutely no question, right? When push comes to shove, I am a Jew before I am anything else, right? I'm a Jew before I'm anything else, and to be a Jew is not merely a matter of religion, and it's not merely a matter of belief. It is a matter of belonging to a people, right? And I remember, there's that my country right or wrong, right? And then somebody came along and modified it. There's my country right or wrong, when it is right to be kept right, and when it is wrong to be set right? And that's what I mean, my people right or wrong, right? I mean, when we're right, let's keep it right. And when we're wrong, let's fix it, right? But I am a Jew before I am anything else, right? And when I think, and I could be wrong about this, right? But when I think about the divide, right, plaguing the American Jewish community, right? And look, I mean, for me, here's the bottom line, and again, you can agree or disagree, right? There is justice ad bellum, and there is justice in bellum, right? Which means the question is it ethical to fight this war? Okay? And is it ethical for Israel to fight this war? Absolutely, right? I mean, the first obligation of a state is to protect its citizens and to defend its citizens. And it didn't do that on October 7th, and it's still not doing it, and it's certainly not doing it for the hostages, but that's its obligation, and this is absolutely a just and obligatory war. Is the war being fought justly? Let's say not always, okay? But that's a different question. You can fight a just war by unjust means, and we don't have time to this. Thank God, we don't have time to discuss this now, right? But for those American Jews who think that the war should not be fought at all, right? Because, and I get it, right? It opposes their values, right? And to a large extent, I share those values, right? But, and this is a weird statement, right? Am I more loyal to my values, or am I more loyal to my people? Right? And the bottom line is I am more loyal to my people, and when my people are acting contrary to my people's values, I don't have the right to opt out. All the more so, I opt in and I work to return my people to its values, okay? But if you don't even realize that to be a Jew is to be a part of a people, you're the wicked son of Pesach, right? You're the wicked son at Pesach, right? What does this mean to you, right? To you, but not to me, right? He doesn't realize that he is a part of the people, right? Now, then the Haggadah says, what do you do with the wicked son, right? You smack them in the head. Okay, I mean, and I will tell you, all right, there are times that I have a strong desire to do that, okay? Just as there were times, like a couple of weeks ago, when a bunch of them, they're starting to make some arrests in this case in LA, and I knew they were Israeli, I just knew, right? And a bunch of Israelis came down to UCLA with bats and sticks and fireworks and firecrackers, and beat the heck out of a lot of people in the Palestinian encampment. And I was saying simultaneously, yay, and this is wrong and it's terrible, right? And it is wrong and it's terrible, but sometimes the lizard part of your brain triumphs over the sale, right? And over your ethics, right? But so I'm not sure that smacking them in the head is really, I mean, it may feel good, but it's not an effective response. So I disagree with the Haggadah about that, but that's it. Bottom line, if you're a Jew, you are a member of a people. And your primary, I mean, obviously your primary loyalty is to your spouse and your kids, right? But beyond that, it's to your people. And if your people are right, keep them right. And if your people are wrong, set them right. But you do not have the right to opt out. You just don't. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand what being a Jew really means. Shabbat Shalom. We continue now with the cottage